Here are 11 UFC fighters who always pull out of fights. Khamzat Chimaev wanted to fight anybody.
I'm most dangerous guy here. I got a comment for everyone.
Yet in the last few years he has fought basically no one. And now let's talk numbers. One fight in the last 21 months, 7 cancelled fights in the UFC, and a total of just 6 UFC fights. Chimaev's UFC career looked like this: 3 fights in 10 weeks and then basically nothing. But there are fighters who are even worse than Khamzat at pulling out of fights. Number 2 goes to the biggest redneck in the UFC.
I only use soap on 2 things, my armpits and my cock.
Sean Strickland had a total of 9 cancelled fights. Yet, despite a few downfalls,
Good because he's... Oh!
he touched UFC gold after beating Adesanya. Nevertheless, I think we all will remember Sean Strickland mainly for his out-of-pocket moments.
Every white person I've ever met when I was a kid and I would, draw sweat, cut my arm, they would be like, fuck you.
His unique persona, both inside and outside the octagon, ensures he remains one of the most talked about fighters in the sport. Unlike Strickland, number 3 is a guy who struggles with being recognized.
I got a question for, I forgot the name.
So he even had to put it in his nickname. Belal Muhammad faces disrespect due to his so-called boring fighting style, as the majority of his victories are by decision. Muhammad is undefeated in the last 5 years. On the other hand, he had 10 cancelled fights, rarely securing a finish, and had a controversial finish via eye poke. So far, Belal Muhammad is one of the most disrespected UFC fighters.
Meet Belal only to try and disrespect him again by asking if he could step aside so he could take a picture with the UFC belt.
Yet, he has a chance to earn a title and respect at UFC 304. Just wait until number 5 because that guy got literally in the cage. Number 4 is Khabib Nurmagomedov, who never struggled with respect, except for the McGregor fight.
A little rat, a little weasel.
Even though Nurmagomedov yelled,
Send me a message, like location, I'm gonna come.
he had a total of 10 cancelled fights, and 5 of them were against Tony Ferguson. This matchup is often called cursed, as it was booked many times, but right before the fight, Ferguson injured his knee.
Tony Ferguson hurt himself. He tore his LCL.
Despite all this, Khabib defended Ferguson when asked about his mental health.
Honestly, it's like nothing personal here. I don't want to talk about his problem, like family stuff, mental stuff, like this is his problem, leave him alone.
That's why Khabib is one of the most respected fighters, even though he has so many pullouts. Now it's time for the finest fighter in the UFC.
A shit, that fight was a shit. I will make him cry. I will hit him very badly, and he will cry like a baby. I will slap his face on my fight against him, because that's it.
Paulo Costa has a total of 11 cancelled fights, and his resume from the last 4 years is horrifying. Costa spends more time on Twitter than on MMA training. He probably cares more about his six-pack than his record. The outcome is he got literally in the cage. With the next fighter, we will stay in the middleweight division but focus on the top. Dricus du Plessis, the champ and African brother.
This is my African brother right here. Let's go, nigga. What's up, bitch?
Du Plessis has a total of 12 cancelled fights, and his rise to the UFC belt is unbelievable, especially considering his beginnings. 5 cancelled fights in a span of 2 years is insane. We will see a similar story at number 8. But before that, let's address Dricus getting hate for not fighting at UFC 300.
I was ready to fight from then on. I just wasn't ready for UFC 300. I had a 6-week recovery before I could start training on my foot, and that's 2 weeks before the event. So I'm sorry, I don't know. Once again, people who've never been in there, and then of course, after you've taken shots like that, you need to let your brain recover.
But I wonder how people cannot like this guy. He is so good, well-spoken, respectful until you disrespect him. A complete MMA fighter, confident and grounded in the same time. Unlike Chimaev and Costa, he is here for the fight. Overeem is an absolute legend with a total of 66 professional MMA fights. Overeem has had only 14 cancelled fights. It may seem like a lot, but considering Overeem is in the game since 1999, it's quite a remarkable number. Besides those fights, he has collected many KOs and earned the title of having a glass chin. After the KO from Francis Ngannou, Overeem's brain has never been the same.
Alistair, what are you making?
Beef. I like beef. Beef makes you strong. Once you understand why, right, and I'm here to kind of bring this information to the world. Meat is not good for you, it negatively affects you.
Frank Mir has a total of 14 cancelled fights, and his story is similar to Dracus du Plessis. The start was frustrating. 6 cancelled fights in 1 year were perhaps more impactful than those by Brock Lesnar's. The end of his career was similar to Tony Ferguson's, whom we will talk about in a minute. A complete disaster. 6 cancelled fights, 11 losses and only 3 victories. Not to criticize Mir, in his prime he literally broke arms. Now let's talk about El Kooky, the craziest man in the UFC. Ferguson is currently on a 7-fight losing streak, which has never been seen in the UFC. Yet we are here to talk about his 14 cancelled fights. We have discussed the cursed fight with Nurmagomedov. But Ferguson has had this misfortune throughout his career. Leave Tony here, we are moving on big numbers. Number 10 is a guy who faced Tony Ferguson, Bobby Green. Green is a hell of a man for fighting at the age of 38. Yet in this list, Bobby Green is here for his 19 cancelled fights. His worst period came in 2014-15, when he missed 8 fights. Bobby Green is a man with many experiences. And if you want to know more about him, the best thing I can recommend is those episodes of Jackson podcast. But before moving there, it's time for the king of the most cancelled fights of all time. Before we reveal the last number of cancelled fights, you can guess it in the comment. The last name on the list is Victor Belfort. Victor Belfort is known for many reasons. The first one, he almost submitted JJ. Second one, his body before and after roids is hilarious. And the last one, his explosive finishes are a beautiful feast for the eyes. But what many people are unaware of are his 24 cancelled fights. Looking at his record, we can see a sad trend. When Victor was waiting for someone, he would lose. It's obvious in the case of Chris Weidman.
Deshaun Strickland. Deshaun, tell us, what do you got coming up? Deshaun, what do you got coming up? Bro, have you ever seen stop. Have you ever seen? Alright guys, we out here. Me and my nigga, Chris Curtis as well. What's up, man? Deshaun Strickland. Deshaun Strickland. So I recently just not became racist. It feels really good, you guys. I got a lot of friends now.